Hi all. So previously I spoke about the problem of defining the problem or knowing what question to ask in an academic project or a research project. It's very important because the fidelity or the accuracy with which you ask your question helps other researchers and other people who are looking for answers know what the contents of your paper are or what's inside there. Because if I said something like, this paper solves the problem of social interaction in games, that's extremely vague and doesn't really provide any useful information for anyone in the field. So what I'm going to do as an example, I'm going to take the abstract, which is the key part from my dissertation, which dealt with a problem in this field, but a very specific one. So let me read it off here. Dialogue trees are pre-written content which is not machine parsable and therefore static, making them expensive to produce and iterate. We analyze the evolution of social interactions and find the key factors of usability in existing game systems, cost, and authorship. Through a series of prototypes, we prove a data-driven system which supports second-degree authorship and is feasible and usable in game systems. Further development in supporting areas like natural language processing and speech generation is needed to be commercially viable. There we go. Now that dissertation, which I'm going to refer to quite a bit because it's like one of the strongest bodies of information I have at the moment to move forward with, that information, that dissertation focused primarily on the problem of, can I alter a situation through second-degree rules? So in this example, I said, well, if I take a scenario like several people in a bar, this came out of an idea many years ago when I decided, let me try scope down this problem to generating the classic D&D tavern scenario. But anyway, so take several people in a bar and say, we want to define a set of rules, like for instance, dwarves hate elves, elves hate dwarves, guys tend to have brown hair, women tend to have longer hair, blah 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 blah. All this like arbitrary rules which a person could author, and then via those arbitrary rules and some seeded information, we could generate a social situation in which the information of the situation was understood. The agents could have knowledge of the situation and answer basic queries on that situation. So in this example, we did a whole query structure and everything and moved forward. So anyway, I'm rambling and getting off topic. Back to topic. The thing that I'm trying to talk about is why it's so important to know what the question is that you're asking, what the nature of the problem is, so you can scope it and so you can define it. Now, I have not come up with a clear, concise academic language that I want to use yet. I have a rough idea of where I want to go with these 12 weeks. The rough idea is as follows. Using either detective prototype or a tactical shooter prototype, I'll explain why both in another video, I'm going to do a very simple game in which we author some content and some agents interact in the environment. We use an acronym called a multi-agent system, a MAS. MAS means the agents can interact with each other as well, and they can discuss the environment or the game situation, but not necessarily directly impact it or make decisions on it. So the two example games I'm thinking about to demonstrate this. And when I say game, don't think about this fairly-fledged fun thing. Think about this really rough prototype. The two projects I'm thinking, the prototypes I'm thinking. The first one is a detective scenario where we randomly generate a crime with, say, 5 individuals, and we give them knowledge of the information, or knowledge of the system. And then, as a player, you query these individuals to build a picture of the information. So you're trying to understand where things is, and the agents, because they have knowledge and they know what's incriminating and what's not incriminating, so to speak, they will attempt to manipulate the information as they perceive it, and they will attempt to deliver an altered picture. And then you're trying to decipher that picture. So that's the first idea. The concept behind that is building on my dissertation, using second-degree authorship, being able to set a series of rules under which crimes can be generated, and then characters can understand the situation. And then building, again, on my dissertation, the work there about the query-response format using an atomic data model. Now, atomic data model just means that each piece is individual and self-standing, so to speak. Anyway, using that structure, building a game under which we can query a series of events which have been randomly, it's rather say procedurally generated, because procedurally generated doesn't necessarily mean random. It may use random as part of its procedure, but it's from a set of rules. It's from a context there. The other project is slightly more ambitious in terms of support work, but less ambitious in terms of dialogue work. In this, make a very simple turn-based tactical shooter, which I've been planning to make anyway for this other thing, this like personal project, just like a fun game, which uses squad-based tactics to do like an XCOM style game. As I say, the support work is larger than I'd like. But the idea of this is, if each of these individuals was a character, they got given their orders and went through the mission, and maybe had a few barks or a few random social statements or just indications through the mission of their personality. But that's secondary. The primary thing would be what we call the debrief, which is after the mission in either a bar or a official military environment or some kind of structured environment. You actually talk to these individuals and you get an idea of what went on with the mission. Now, and then they can talk to each other as well. Now, the two projects have different strengths and weaknesses. The detective project has very little support work required, because you can literally do like a text parser, and there's like no graphics or anything really required to make it pretty or to make it functional. Now, the problem with that is that very heavily reliant on the procedural generation, the authorship system, which my dissertation built upon, because the scenario is entirely seeded and generated from this code. There's no actual player interaction, so the quality of the simulation could be poor. The other example, the tactical turn-based shooter, the advantage of this is, other than some basic seeded information about bad guys, good guys, blah blah blah, general relationship stuff, the majority of the information is actually coming from the game environment, and it's slightly closer to what I think most games could implement it as, because if I can make it so that the few members of the team have built relationships or have built perceptions of missions based on actual inputs from missions, I know the quality of the simulation, the quality of the information they're receiving is going to be better, so we can build on that. And so this is where I'm kind of standing, and this is where I'm kind of debating which way to go. I know the second-degree authorship is feasible, but it's not 100% proven. Likewise with the query and response format. Now, what neither of these projects really touches on, because I don't really feel comfortable yet diving into it, is another idea which I have, which is called dissemination. Now, dissemination basically means spreading information. It means one agent in a game talking to another agent in a game and conveying information. I think part of these games could both touch on it, but it couldn't actually engage with it, not to the degree I'd like, but I think it could make a start in progress. So when I'm looking to define this project, or when I'm looking to define this proposal, I'm looking at these two options. I see the detective scenario possibly going to be a dead end, but could also advance the study further. However, I know that the chances of that actually producing anything that the general public could play and enjoy, or the general person could play and enjoy, is very low. So it'll be entirely a academic prototype. The other example, I know that the tactical shooter, regardless of the dialogue, is going to be fun. So it's slightly more tempting to do that because of exterior motivations, but I kind of need to find that. In both cases, I think what I'm really trying to get at, as I say, is the secondary authorship. I'm kind of already proven as a concept. What I'm really trying to get at is the core idea that the agents can understand the scenario and then communicate that scenario and possibly misrepresent the scenario based on their own emotions or their own feelings. So the big decision for me now is to define the scope, is to define exactly what I'm trying to tackle, and define which of these two projects, if they are suitable, there may be a different project that's more suitable, is going to prove the concept best. So that's kind of where I stand. It's Saturday morning, so I'm going to barbecue this afternoon, and I'm going to kind of sit down on it and think on it, and then possibly by tomorrow I'll have an idea of which of these two I want to tackle. I may, while I'm trying to make this decision, do a few more videos going through my dissertation and previous concepts to kind of bring you all up to speed on everything I'm talking about. And because the more I explain things to the camera and the more I explain things to other people, the more they sort of make sense in my own head, because I always find talking to people about all this stuff makes so much more sense. So yeah, there it is. It's going to be some more videos, not necessarily relating directly to my 12-week project, possibly diving into my dissertation to kind of explain what the work is I'm doing, and by explaining it to you, getting it firmer in my head so I can move the project forward. Thanks. This is Claire, and goodbye.